for our local region education service center here in Texas. I'm in the Waco region, Region 12. In our region, it's pretty big. We cover a large span of Central Texas, 76 school districts, 10 charters, and so I'm so excited about this kind of new piece that we just started adding at the end of last year. We started diving into video for instructional coaching and for our PLCs, and it's been amazing. As a teacher, my last year in the classroom, I actually fell into a little bit of self-reflection with video for myself as I prepared some materials to put on my teacher website for students to preview and review. And that was crazy powerful for me as a teacher. So when I moved out of the classroom the next year, I was itching to use that with other teachers, and I could never get anybody to buy in or had the resources until this year. So it's been a long time coming for me. It's been about 6 years that I've been wanting to do this. So I am super excited and passionate about this. It's all I can talk about with my colleagues whenever we mention coaching, or even if not, I bring it up. So I'm really excited to be here and kind of talking about what this has done with us and how it's really taken it to the next level for coaching for the people that we serve in our districts.
Awesome. And before Kenny says anything, I just want to do one more quick plug. Corey really is finding some really innovative ways to do this, and she's actually working on a blog post about one of the ways in which they're using it. So that's something to look forward to on our blog coming up soon. So Kenny, why don't you tell us more about yourself?
Yeah, hey everybody, my name is Kenny McKee. I'm a high school literacy and instructional coach in Asheville, North Carolina. I work for the Buncombe County School District, and I am assigned to 4 particular schools that I work with in a coaching capacity. And what I do with those schools is data analysis, co-teaching, observation and feedback, public teaching models, modeling classrooms. I facilitate PLCs, help supply resources through data coaching, all that stuff, plus whatever else drops in my lap, as probably most of you guys know in all your roles as well. And the video coaching piece is a newer aspect to my coaching, and I will love to share what I'm doing with that so far as we talk, but I'm also interested in learning more from Corey, of course, because she's been doing a lot. And of course, all our participants. I can't wait to hear your questions and what you all may be trying.
Great, which brings up our next point, which is don't be afraid to ask questions. You know, like I said in the invitation, you know, one of the best learning experiences I had professionally as a teacher was what, you know, we called it book club, but it was on a Thursday or Friday afternoon after work when we would go to the Donkey, which if you're from Texas or from the Houston area, you might know about the Donkey, some of the best margaritas in all the world. And we would go and we would, you know, have some chips and queso and some drinks and just talk about our days and talk about what we were doing in our classrooms. And I learned so much. And so I want to create an informal space like that for us today and going forward. So don't be afraid to jump right in and ask questions of these 2 outstanding educators. The chat, if you haven't found it yet, you should be able to see a button that says chat at the bottom of your screen. Just click on that. Make sure that when you're typing into the chat that you're asking something that's available, that's viewable by all panelists and attendees. I actually was on a webinar at lunch today and didn't realize until about halfway through all of my questions that I was only asking the panelist the questions and no one else could see my questions. So just make sure that your questions are public so that we can all see them. And we'll go ahead and get started. I want to start a poll just to sort of see who everybody is here. So you should see this poll in a second. Just tell us about yourself. So what is your role in your school or district? Are you an instructional coach, a teacher leader, someone who is spending part of their time in classroom and part of their time as a campus leader? Are you a campus leader or a district leader? Good. So it seems like most everybody is an instructional coach. We've got a few district leaders, some mysterious others. So we've got some responses from people, and it's good to see that this is something, you know, instructional coaching is I saw it really improve the quality of teaching on my campus when I was a teacher, and I've watched amazing instructional coaches work throughout the Houston area. First, when I was working for HISD, and then now I get to see amazing instructional coaches all over the world, and it's really amazing to see what that looks like. And I know that there's some evolution in the instructional coaching process, and what exactly do I do when I'm an instructional coach. I remember when instructional coaches first got hired in my campus, they were all sorts of different things. They were kind of APs, and they were kind of party planners sometimes, and sometimes they were counselors. And but I've watched that the role of instructional coaching become refined over the last few years, and I think that there's a lot more rigor to the process that people go through. But one of the big challenges is feedback. How do we work with our colleagues? We may or may not have authority as instructional coaches, so we may have to be influential without authority. We may or may not have the same credibility walking into every conversation, and so how do we build that? So conversations are important, and I want to just talk first about the role of video in those conversations. So Corey, let's start with you. So when you think about video footage, so actually seeing a video of a teacher in the classroom, how has that changed topics of conversations you've had when you're following up with teachers that you've coached in a post-conference?
It's changed it tremendously. One, for me, depending on how I'm seeing that video, it could be that I'm actually in the classroom doing a live video observation, and I'm able to not spend so much time bogged down in scripting every little thing with my feedback. Because if you're in there and you're just with your traditional pen and paper, right, the old school way to do it, you're thinking of what it is you want to give feedback on. You may go in with a focus. You may be in there for the first time trying to figure out what is happening, get a context of the instruction and where you might help lead that teacher in your coaching, but you're taking those copious notes, and you tend to miss out on some things. And you're trying to set that stage when you give that feedback so they know exactly what you were kind of talking about within those feedback notes. So synced notes has been huge in allowing me to kind of just put some notes in there that are very direct. The video gives the context for everything. It allows me to go back and rewatch it for the times when I was taking notes to kind of see, all right, I've got a couple of trends in here that I might lead for conversation, but let me go back and watch it again and kind of see what are the precursors to that, or what are some things that they do in another way. It's also, if a teacher sends me video, I've again can kind of rewatch and kind of gather some of those pieces. So as far as conversations, whether it's I see a video and I'm giving them feedback, or I'm in there giving observation, it's been huge for me as a coach to really get a good picture of what's happening. And then if that video footage is shared with that teacher before that conversation, and I believe it should be, you both view that video before you come together and have a conversation. It helps that conversation be so much more directed and focused and objective. It really helps you come across as building a partnership and being next to that teacher instead of saying, here's what I saw. We can have the conversation of, okay, so what did you see? And how did you feel about that? What is a direction you're wanting to go? That's huge for me in my role at the regional level, because we are not on a specific campus or even a district. Sometimes I'm seeing a teacher every other month. Sometimes I'm seeing them every other week. So establishing trust is a hard thing, especially because we're brought on to a campus usually because they want to pay for our services to support them. In some areas. So it's not like a teacher signed up for coaching with me on their own whim. It's they've been chosen for that. So it really has helped that so much more, because we can come together and look at that clear reality. We both have the same basis whenever we're looking at instruction.
Great. Yeah. And you brought up a couple of, I think, really crucial issues. And I wonder, Kenny, if you might expound upon them. One of them is the idea of getting a clear picture of reality. And you actually brought it up sort of, Corey, you talked about it both for the teacher and for yourself, which I think is really, we think a lot about how when the teacher sees a video of themselves, that it's suddenly a clear picture of reality for them. But I think one of the best things that video provides us with, and Jim Knight talks about this a lot in a lot of his books, is that we get to, in a partnership approach, watch that video together and establish a common clear picture of reality, rather than me being able to say, I see the truth, you don't, or vice versa. So Kenny, talk a little bit more about how that experience is changing the way that you're building trust with teachers. You may have never had problems with trust before, but
I've had problems with trust before, but I do think I have it a little bit easier than maybe in Corey's role, in that I've been working with the same schools for over 6 years now. So the people who have been in there for the long run, that haven't been involved in turnover, so to speak, in those schools, do know me. They know what I'm about. They know how I can support them. And some of them buy in, and sometimes they don't always buy in, But as far as the clear concept of reality, there's a couple of things I would like to say there. Just like Corey was talking about with her scripting, for example, when I go into a classroom and I'm trying to, either the teacher has asked me to focus on their questioning, or they asked me to focus on student discussions, it's really difficult to capture every element of that accurately, especially student discussions, because I'm kind of like moving around the room and hovering in these groups. So I find that videos are really convenient, an easy way to really capture those moments. And I also feel sort of like you guys were already commenting on, coming to the video together. We call those third points here in our program. And, oftentimes we talk about the third point of professional text, or the third point of student data. Another third point is video, because it's something that you can kind of investigate together as partners. And I think it's helpful sometimes too. I'm going to be in a coaching situation next week where it's more of, we're trying something new in a classroom. We're trying some differentiation through some technological means, and it's new for me. And the teacher I'm partnering with on it, I've asked her to do the video of me and give me feedback on how I'm doing with her students, and us come together and have that conversation. So, if you're a coach out there and you're worried about experimenting with video, one option might be offer to be the guinea pig first.
Right.
And, if you're using something like SIDME, you can invite that classroom teacher and maybe some other teachers into a huddle and, have feedback from everyone on the lesson.
That's a great point, Kenny. That was something I see that Kimberly had asked a question. How do you establish that relationship so teachers are comfortable with viewing video? There's been some great tips in that series that you guys are doing right now, TJ, with that leader, that administrator, but going in that way. And that's something that I did in the pilot that we had. I had a teacher who was just really uncomfortable with video, and because it was a pilot, we had SIDME on trial. At that point, we were trying to get the most out of it that we could. And so we went head first in video with some of those teachers, but I could tell that if I went in with a camera to this teacher's classroom, no matter how much I smiled and assured her it was okay, and even that she had seen me before, it wasn't the first time she had met me, it wasn't going to be very beneficial or productive for her. So that's exactly what we talked about doing, was going in and modeling that. And what's amazing about that is, one, you're modeling the use of video and even that self-reflection with the video, but then that teacher can come back to it over and over again. So if you're in a co-teaching situation, and I've done that co-teaching as a model and then come back with those teachers, and they didn't quite gather what I had hoped to model for them, or that one piece that I'd really hoped they had caught. They were doing something else because they were co-teaching during that model with me. So it allows, again, you to come back and revisit that and really get a good, clear picture. And I think it's also super efficient because I might be modeling a questioning strategy with them, or we might be looking at student discussions, but then come back later on and we're looking at something with cueing, or there's a good opportunity for transitions in that. So you can really maximize your work a lot with that. But modeling is huge, I think, for our teachers. It's a great use of video for us as coaches.
And what's great is once you have that video, you could actually reuse that video with different groups when
Yes.
you kind of induct them into trying video. The other thing, I did want to say one other thing that I think is interesting about reflecting on your teaching with video, and I experienced this several years ago when I went through the national board process the first time, is that there's something called tacit knowledge that teachers have that is often not explicit. It's not something that they know to discuss. It might be how they have students hand out papers, for example. Something that they've just kind of come to, that another person comes in the room and they say, that's amazing, right? Sometimes they don't know to talk about those things, or you as a coach might bring them up and they'll say, I don't understand what you meant. What do you mean how I asked that question? Or so video is a really great way to capture that and learn from people on things that we don't maybe always think of to bring up.
Right.
Yeah, I really like that. I mean, I just was going to jump in and just say that, it very often you'll hear people say, oh, it's really hard for new teachers to develop their skills because they don't know what they don't know. But you're pointing out that a lot of people don't know what they do know. And when you're talking about building a relationship with someone, I can't think of a better way to build a relationship with me, at least. If anybody's looking to build a relationship with me, than to tell me all the great things that I can do. But they're willing to open up to some of that vulnerability if as Corey, you said, they're modeling that vulnerability. And then also, Kenny, as you're saying, you're pointing out that they're in pretty good shape. I'm more willing to take risk if I feel comfortable and if I feel successful. So yeah, sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you, Corey.
Oh no, I absolutely agree with that. And something that's great about the platform with the tags that are already put in there, you've got question, idea, and bright spot. Nowhere does it say judgment or get better here or grows even. It's all really positive connotations, which I think is super helpful for building that. But, right along those same lines as not really realizing what we do, a lot of that comes from one, we're not used to, when I was a teacher, it wasn't my focus. My focus was on my students. And it was on responding to my students, but it really wasn't always on what I was doing to kind of support that response. And I think that comes from, as educators, we are doing so many things while delivering instruction. We've spent time planning what we were going to deliver. We had this big idea in mind. We're moving forward with that plan, and it's changing, it's evolving as students are responding to that. We are trying to keep that big picture in mind while kind of changing it up on the fly, as well as managing the classroom, keeping things organized, doing individual classroom behavior management with students. And it's no wonder that they maybe don't notice something that's happening outside of their radar. And when we come in as coaches, we kind of come in eyes open, antenna up, radar on, and our radar might focus in over here, and that's not even where that teacher is. So they have a hard time kind of seeing what you're talking about because they're over here looking at these maybe 6 or 7 kids, and maybe that's where they really wanted the feedback too. So if I just go in gun blazing and say, here's what I think, here's what I saw, they're going, yeah, that's great, but I really wanted help over here. That's where my radar is right now. So I think that video really helps you kind of see all those pieces. And if I missed where that radar was, we can go back and look at that with the video together.
I agree. And I also think, you raise the question of, when possible, have the teacher set the goals for the visit. And that's not every way that a coach is functioning necessarily, but if possible, have the teacher set those goals. And it's funny because Sydney actually really helped me out recently with a situation, because I had a teacher approach me and he was concerned about, it had been pointed out to him that he may have some struggles with body language and how the body language he was giving off was being interpreted by students.
Mm-hmm.
And I really didn't know how to do that. Like, I didn't know how to give him feedback on his body language. So I was like, Sydney,
Let's look at it.
Let's watch a video together and let's see how students respond to you and see if there's anything that you might alter in your inflection or the way that you're standing, or, do you lean into students when they're asking a question?
Mm-hmm.
Because I really didn't know where to even begin. Sydney was a great way, using that video function was a great way to address a situation that was kind of, sensitive.
Right. Yeah, that's a great use of Sydney for that. Yeah, I think that is what has been one of the big changes for me, at least as a coach, is with video, because my conversations are more pointed, we get to a really strong goal and a good way to measure that goal really quickly. And so then every observation or video observation after that, we do come into that with a goal in mind. And it's really helpful to prioritize that because of video.
Yeah, so that sort of segues us into the next conversation, which is the process. So when you're engaging in these conversations, what does the timeline look like for you guys, and how do you sort of cycle through deciding when to talk, when to video, when to reflect, all that sort of stuff?
Kenny, you want to start with that one?
Well, the true answer, but maybe not the right answer, would be when I can and when the teacher can. I mean, I think that's the nice aspect of video, is that the video is always there as the evidence. I try to circle back to people within a week at the latest, while it's still fresh and still able for them to act on their goals. And if I can, if we can even get to it, that day or the next day, it's ideal to do so. But it's not always necessarily achievable. But yeah, and generally I try to share the video with them soon after the video is recorded, and I might go ahead and make a couple of notes on the video, but I also encourage them to do that, so when we come back that I know that we've all watched the video. And if that's kind of stressful for you to start out with, some of the ways I've been beginning is just doing really short clips. So sometimes I'll be in a classroom and the teacher will ask me to work on a specific topic, and I'll say, is there a part of your class that you would like me to try the video for 5 minutes? And we can come back and also discuss that as part of the feedback.
Yeah, I really like that. And so have you largely used this where you're doing all the recording?
Thus far, yes. So I have been in the classroom. I'm looking forward to trying to figure out some ways to expand upon that.
Yeah, Corey, what do you think about that? Because I know you've had some teachers submit video to you as well, right?
Yeah, one that comes kind of with comfort with me and comfort with themselves. Nobody likes seeing themselves on video. In fact, the first few times I did video, again, I wasn't doing it with the purpose of I'm going to coach myself. I was doing it with the purpose of, I've got some kids who need to see some stuff they need some pre-teaching of some things, and I haven't had a chance to get it into the classroom. I taught special education previously. So what if I did that on video and put it on my teacher webpage, and then students could watch it? It could be a review and it could be help for their homework. So I decided to dive into video that way. And I think I did probably 15 or 16 like full takes. Like, they felt good, and I couldn't get myself to watch them, so I deleted them immediately because I couldn't stand the way I looked, the way I sounded. And then I was like, oh, is that really how I look and sound? Those poor kids. So it's not comfortable. So once they kind of get comfortable, usually it's with me coming in and being the person to record that video and then share that with them. But once that happens, once they kind of buy into that sense of empowerment, because that's really what it is. Video has made my teachers that I work with and the teachers that my colleagues are working with so much more empowered in the coaching role. They are in control. They are driving their own PD. And when we talk, I just did a session yesterday on student choice and voice. That's the ultimate for our educational partners is that they have that choice and voice within it. So Sometimes it comes out of necessity where it's, I come on a campus because it never fails. I come on a day that they're about to benchmark or just benchmarked and now they're reviewing the test that they took, or I couldn't make it during the class period they really wanted me to see, whether it's because they really need feedback or they really want to see me see that, this is what I can do. So I say, you know what, why don't you record that? Why don't you record a segment and send it to me when you get a chance? And I just kind of keep encouraging them to do that. And then the other one is, are they comfortable with using the platform? So one of the first things that I do going out to work with teachers, and I do this for some of my colleagues as well, and I've scheduled some of these, is I go out and kind of show them the platform. I show them a sample video of one that teachers that I worked with in the pilot have let me use kind of for training purposes, and show them the power of it, and that it makes it so much more informal. You talked a little bit, TJ, about those book clubs that you had where you just kind of like sat back. It was nice. It was relaxed. There wasn't judgment in there. And that's what I feel like the conversation on the video, because it's timestamped, does for teachers. There's no big formal email that says, thank you for letting me visit your class today, and I really enjoyed your lesson, and here's some constructive feedback, and then I look forward to seeing it. There's none of that. It's really, I love this idea. This was a great strategy, and the teacher can go back and watch exactly what I'm talking about, and they can repeat those same behaviors in future lessons. So when we talk about specific feedback, the video is the specificity for that. So for my teachers, it depends again on that comfort level and just that encouragement. I've got one of the vlog that you had mentioned before, the specialist that I interviewed for that he's working right now, and that he's really been focusing on self-reflection first with his teachers. And so he's not actually scheduled to go out on campus all of November. So he was there a couple of times this month. He'll be there a couple more times in December, and their contract ends in December, and they're not getting anything in November. But because he's been going in and doing the video and has taught them how to do that, their task, the next part of their cycle is to do a self-reflection and then choose one of those self-reflections to share in the coaching huddle. So then he can have that, co-reflection with them in that conversation.
That's awesome. And we're talking a little bit about sort of the platform itself, and I think almost everybody who's here with us today is a Sydney user, but if you want to know more about that, again, feel free to reach out to me. We can talk some more about the platform, because that's not why I wanted to do this. But that being said, there are some specific features that really do enable that conversation. One of which is that sort of time-stamped comment where you're able to actually see some feedback connected to a specific moment in the video. And then the other one that you mentioned was, the ability to tag comments with specific, either whether it be a rubric or some sort of framework that you're using, or some sort of custom marker tag that's unique to your coaching process. It's able to sort of highlight certain parts of the conversation, which, I think about sort of stepping into the next part of the conversation. I think about online communities, and, Corey, you and I were joking about how earlier you will run into people that you haven't seen in a long time, and they'll say, oh, it looked like you had so much fun on your vacation or whatever, and you're thinking, how on earth did they have any idea that happened? And it's because of social media, right? I mean, we're able to sort of keep up with one another's lives in these online spaces. And those big social media giants have done a remarkable job of mimicking the in-person conversation experience that we have all been used to having for thousands of years as humans. But it sometimes can be difficult to set that up. It sometimes can be difficult to set that up specifically in the workplace when you're dealing with colleagues or people that you barely know. And then also when you're dealing with this sort of somewhat anonymous experience of typing comments into some sort of comment feed. And so how have y'all learned the best ways to provide feedback online when you're dealing with someone that you don't necessarily always get to sit in a room with to talk to talk with in person?
I think that the way that SIDME has kind of mimicked those social media platforms, like I always tell my teachers, if you're familiar with Facebook live videos, where comments are time stamped, whether you're watching it live or not, or you can have those reactions are time stamped. So you can go back and see just what somebody put that heart emoji for, or that sad face emoji for, based off what you said. And then the fact that I can put a comment and then that comment can be replied on and we can have our own little sub conversation here. That's been great. And that was something that got lots of really great feedback from the teachers in our pilot program at the end of last year. The fact that it's an app that they can have on their phone and they get a notification that, you know, there's a comment for them and they could quickly reply just to that comment. Again, it's that more of that informal piece that makes us so much more comfortable. We're comfortable with that on social media. This is much of the same way. The other thing that it's done is through those huddles that we have, no longer do we have, and I can still text it. I use Voxer a lot. It's a voice messaging app, like a walkie-talkie. I can still have those, but I try to keep the mode of my communication with my teachers in the SIDME platform within those huddles, because then they don't have to go search for an email from the last time I sent an email. It's right there in the discussion thread. All the resources are saved within there. I do use voice a lot. I really like to use voice a lot. So I like that there's a feature where I can leave a voice note instead of typing it in, because sometimes, you know, no matter how you put it in the black and white, you still want that to come across very warm and encouraging for a teacher. So I use that a lot within our conversation.
Kenny, do you have anything you want to talk about with online communities?
Well, I do think that there's something about the online communities that help with the problem of timeliness. I think that being able to, as far as the SIDME app goes, you know, sending out the video with the comments that you've made and knowing that they can reply back pretty quickly and check it pretty quickly is really helpful. And other ways that we've used that is we have some Canvas courses that teachers have participated in, and they'll upload pictures or videos of student work or something that they've done in their class, and people can use the discussion board to respond to that. I think the difference there is that there is in those courses, there's usually still a live element that's happened first, where people know one another, they meet one another in person, and then we kind of follow up in those courses afterwards. So there is something to be said about, of course, the face-to-face, but you know, it's just not always possible.
We've done a lot of supplementing. Sorry, I just cut you off, Kenny. We did a lot of supplementing though with things like Zoom. I ran a fully virtual regional PLC to connect inclusion teachers, because some of our districts are really small. And so that's how we did that face-to-face piece. They didn't have to come off campus. So that live element, that's still valuable, but in today's day and age, it doesn't have to be face-to-face physically. It can totally be a virtual component.
Yeah. We have many of our teachers in our district participate in virtual PLCs. You know, you're the only art teacher at a high school.
Right.
And we provide time about once a month, an early release day, but they still have to drive somewhere. So there's maybe an hour and a half of time to work together. So some of them have found a way to use that component to work with one another as well. One particular issue that I'm kind of working through now, and SIDME is a way that I'm working through it, is that one of my schools, they're required to do a public teaching exercise every semester. So they've had traditionally 4 choices in the past. They could do peer coaching, they could be involved in a lesson study, they can participate in a live learning walks activity, or they can present a problem of practice and invite colleagues to rounds. And what's happening now is we've gone through the learning walks part that I set up that's live, and some people have missed that. And they're saying, well, what can I do? Because I don't have a rounds group yet. And so now I'm thinking, okay, well, let's see. Is there a way that you could video a colleague and you guys could do a peer coaching cycle that way? Or your colleague can video themselves if you are teaching at the same time, and you guys can come together and have that coaching conversation together. So it's tricky. It's really tricky. So we do need to leverage the power of technology to not only fill the gap, but find ways to also extend and augment from things that we can do live.
And I love that idea of using that, sharing those videos in that PLC of instruction, because as long as I've been doing instructional coaching, which isn't too long, I've been removed from the class that long. So there are things that I coach with my teachers on that I didn't practice firsthand in the classroom. They're newer, or I've discovered a better way to do it, and now I'm a trainer on it, but I haven't implemented it year long with my own kiddos doing it. And I think that that's what that peer piece does. It's the power of those PLCs when it truly becomes a learning community and they're giving each other feedback. And that was something we did in that virtual PLC last year. That was their favorite thing. Their favorite thing was not talking to me at the service center. Their favorite thing was getting to hear other ideas and the way other people were doing it, and that other people were in the same boat that they were. All of those things were crazy helpful. I think something else that you mentioned, Kenny, that I want to circle back to is because we're augmenting that, we're supplementing all of the troubles that we have with communication, especially in the workplace. It's not one more email now, it's just a quick comment. It's a little bit more informal, it's a little faster to reply to. But the more contact we have in an instructional coaching partnership or any kind of professional development partnership, the more focus we have on that, the more intentional focus we have on whatever practice we're focusing on, which means I'm going to be actually practicing that intentionally, which means I'm going to be getting better. So you see a lot more traction, I think, that way, as opposed to I come, I do an observation or a model, we have some conversation to debrief that, talk about, and I share some resources for what you can do in the meantime until I come visit again next month. And I might get to check in with you, but I may not, because I'm kind of the worst at communication sometimes. So having that really quick way to, if I have to sit down and send a formal email, it's going to take me a lot longer than if I can send a quick voice text or something else. And I'm finding the same thing true for my teachers. So you're in touch with them so much more. And then it feels more like a partnership, because you truly are by their side on a weekly basis. For some of my teachers, almost a daily basis, or at least every other week. You're touching base. It makes it so much easier.
Yeah, and part of being successful is the frequency of that feedback and the frequency of those check-ins and working together. And one of the things that we've done, I mean, we are evaluated on our effectiveness as coaches in the district, and it's directly related to student learning. There's no, for me, it's very real that kids are learning in their classrooms every day. And what we found is that when you track the data back to the teachers I work with, we have our high volume users, our mid volume users, and our light users that maybe work with me like once or twice throughout a year, right? And what you find is that the highest growth is the high volume users, the ones that are rarely working with us on either district goals or goals of their own choice. Their students grow the most.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's so much conversation in the instructional coaching world and really in the educational world in general about how do we establish these relationships? How do we build trust? How do we do all these sorts of things? Because if we can't build trust, then growth will never happen. And I think y'all have hit the nail on the head that really the key to any relationship I've ever successfully had is frequency. The more that I get to interact with you, the deeper our relationship becomes. And the sort of existing traditional models of interacting professionally, where we're limited to sitting in a room together, I mean, we all know it. We've all been in education long enough to know that just doesn't ever lead to enough frequency to really develop a deep relationship. And especially if you're dealing with people spread out across campuses or spread out across a big district or something like that, I mean, that's incredibly challenging. And I really like the way in which this sort of the last little topic I want to talk about quickly before we open it up to questions. We've got a couple questions in the chat, and if you're thinking of questions, feel free to go ahead and start adding them. But you both talked about the importance of a conversation, of it being a dialogue between two people. And I think that and you talked about how, it can be more informal when it's just a quick comment and a quick response, those sorts of things, rather than some formal long email or some conversation protocol that's 6 pages long or something like that, which I think are well intentioned, right? Those modes of communication are driven by the fact that we're used to not having a frequency of time to interact with one another, so we got to get it all out on the table at once. How have you found it easier to facilitate those conversations and elicit responses from the coaches that you're talking to, either in the Simi app or through one of these other means like Twitter or Voxer or something like that? What are the strategies you use?
One of the first things I always ask, especially because most of the coaching partnerships I go into, I don't know those teachers very well. Again, I may or may not have seen them at the service center at one of our professional development opportunities, or maybe I came to their campus, but I ask them, what is the best way to contact you? And here's if you need to get a hold of me quickly, I'm very open in sharing my cell phone number with them, because a text is going to get me probably the quickest. And I try to usually push them into Voxer, because that's one of my favorite communication tools. But just finding out where they are and trying to meet them in that place. I try to keep a lot of the coaching conversation, so we have it kind of there, whether that's kind of summarizing a quick chat that we had via Twitter or Voxer or text in the SIDME platform, where our huddle and all of our work is saved. But I try to meet them where they are. What makes you feel comfortable? When's the best time to chat with you? I mean, are you most available after 8 o'clock, after you put the kids to bed, or is it at lunchtime, or do you want to be left alone at lunch? Just having a conversation, asking them what their preferences are, I think is the first place to start.
Yeah, I often begin a coaching relationship around, I use a coaching menu. It's a Google form that I send out to everyone. And it has questions on there such as, what are your student needs that you're focused on? How do you learn best? So rather than forcing them in a certain way of doing a coaching cycle, I say, do you want to co-teach? Do you want me to come in and do a lesson? Do you want someone to visit your class? Do you just need someone to talk to right now? Mm-hmm. They can set up all that. And then I learned the hard way. I also have them tell me the urgency. So they either tell me this is as soon as possible, sometime in the next month, sometime this semester, and that helps me schedule out my ability to get back to them in the manner that's going to be most responsive for whatever their needs are. So that's, and I also say for somebody, whether they're going to carry on digital communications or live communications, it just breaks the ice. I start the conversation and say, I saw on your coaching menu that you feel like your students are struggling with academic vocabulary and science, and that you are looking for some ideas of how to better improve your instruction around vocabulary. Is that still something that feels important and fresh to you right now? Or do you have another need? And then it goes from there. So immediately they usually respond pretty well because you've heard them.
Yeah, I mean, I really like that. And, it reminds me of my earliest coaching relationship with my mentor when I was a new teacher, who I never miss an opportunity to brag about, Jean Duffy, who is easily one of the best educational coaches in the world. She taught me early on that great partnership coaching doesn't require you to have all of the answers. It really just means that you need to have some of the right questions. And giving someone else the power to lead the conversation can be transformative to that relationship. I think that's really, really good. And I really like that you're both talking about choice and all that sort of stuff, because it can be a huge game changer for those conversations. And I really like it. So yeah, just start thinking about the questions. Just make sure that you never ask the question why without anything else, right? Because that can be a little accusatory. But yeah, that's really good.
Just what you said, I just want to throw in one other thought. I think to be a really excellent coach, you have to know how to coach teachers that are far better than you.
Oh yeah.
far better than you
Right.
were or ever will be. It's a totally separate, discrete set of skills. And if you're always approaching a coaching situation as thinking like, I'm like king or queen teacher and I know how everything's done, that is not going to be successful. I have coached so many people that I know are better teachers than I was in the classroom, and maybe am at this point, and I'm still learning.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I've coached teachers who are better than me. I mean, every single one.
I have to. That was probably the first person I coached when I came out of the classroom. I was a veteran teacher, and she was actually one of the teachers that I looked up to. And I would go and steal her lesson plan ideas from our online lesson piece. I mean, she was when I couldn't figure out what to do. I went and looked at her lesson plans, and then here I was coaching her. So I let her know, like, absolutely. And I learned a lot of hard lessons that year. I learned, I really have to focus on how hard to push a teacher. And then I ultimately learned it's not about pushing them. It's about helping them along wherever they want to go. If I'm pushing, then I'm doing all the work, and that's not beneficial for anybody. But I think, Kenny, what you kind of talked about, vulnerability, it just to go and say, this is my role, and this is how I kind of see our partnership. And I want you to talk about how you see this partnership working out, and here's some of the things that I can help you in. And by no means am I an expert in that area, but I can definitely help you investigate that and try some different things. And it's a learning process. And where it gets hard and where it gets kind of fuzzy and you maybe make a few mistakes, that's where the most of the learning happens. We say that about our students. It's absolutely true in the professional learning world as well.
My favorite
Yeah.
phrase is, let's figure it out together.
Yeah,
Yes.
I mean, and there's some great models for that, right? In outside of education, right? I mean, most of the greatest athletic coaches who've lived were not the greatest players. I mean, they're able to see from a broader perspective, sort of the game, right? Rather than having to think about that individual play or that individual strategy. And great movie directors are not necessarily the best actors or lighting designers or any of that sort of thing. They just have the job of seeing the bigger picture, and that's really, really good. Good. So we've got a few minutes left, and we've got a couple questions in the chat. And Vanessa said that using video increases the frequency to interact with teachers, often lost in driving time to campuses. I know because we used to work together that Vanessa works in Houston, and so she and I have both spent a lot of time sitting in traffic. So
Sitting in traffic. I
not
have
getting to
2-hour
coach.
drives to campuses, but no traffic. That's probably worse.
Yeah, there's absolutely no traffic on a cell phone. So that's nice that you can break down those barriers. But Kimberly wants to know if you faced any challenges with video coaching. I know the first challenge that everybody talks about is just getting that teacher to be willing to do it. And we've talked a little bit about it, but what other challenges have you faced? What lessons have you learned that you can share, and how have you overcome some of those challenges?
I think some of the challenges for me was once I realized the power of video and how it could make the coaching so much more focused towards a bigger goal. You could kind of, the power of seeing yourself on video as a teacher, where I may have as a coach wanted to try to kind of say, what if we worked on this and maybe this, trying to see this. And again, it's not on their radar, or they don't really realize what exactly you're talking about. We might spend 2 or 3 visits around that topic, but if you see it and you go, oh, that's I can fix that next period. Then we can get to some of the heavier stuff. Then for me as a coach, it was figuring out, how do I create it doesn't always have to happen in cycles, but how do I kind of create that flow for the learning for them? So structuring. I've got some feedback on my line. I don't know what happened. But structuring that has been really helpful.
I think aside from what we've already discussed with people buying into doing it, I mean, this is very technical, but where am I videoing and how am I videoing? Whether it's the coach going in doing the video himself or herself, or if it's the teacher doing it, like is the video capturing what I want to capture or focusing on what I want to focus on. So, if you set a camera across the room, or you set up your iPad or however you're taking video across the room, and you're really focused on student conversations or effectiveness of groups, you're not going to really get what you need. So in that case, you either need to have another colleague, or you yourself, or your coach, or even maybe a student might play cameraman for part of the time to go around and hear those groups, what they're speaking about. So I do think that there is a challenge about thinking about placement, and whether the frame of the video is mobile or static.
And I think that you identified, I think, one of the most important parts of that, which is before I walk into the room to record that video, I have to think about what I want to capture, and then using that to drive how you record. But it's just like a good lesson plan, right? You got to think about it first before you really think about what you're going to do. So really taking that time to be proactive about that, I think, is absolutely crucial. Sometimes you're not able to do that, right? You're in the classroom and you think, oh, I got to get this on film. And so you just whip your phone out and open up the app and start recording. But yeah, just being mindful about that is, I think, one of the best ways to overcome that. Good. So Kimberly, thank you for thanking us. Yeah. Corey, go ahead.
One other thing, and I can't believe I didn't mention this first, that I told all of our other coaches after my pilot was time for me. So suddenly I have this video, and I don't have to be on a campus or in a classroom to see it. I can be on the campus and technically be in 5 different classrooms, because 4 of them are recording, and then I'm face to face in one classroom. But then not scheduling the time for me to review those and give feedback killed myself during that pilot. Like, I'm talking long days trying to do all the work that I just thought, oh, that's great, I'll be able to be there, but I'm not doing the work there yet. So schedule that. Right now I have almost every Thursday is set aside for virtual coaching. I open my calendar for appointment slots, so my teachers know that they can schedule a time to do a virtual conference with me, or if they really need me to come on campus, I have that day open to go and visit sites if I need to. But that's also my day to catch up on any video I haven't viewed and provide feedback, or seek out those resources, or create videos for teachers. So definitely make room in your schedule for that work, because if you just fill it with other things, then you're going to be twice as busy.
That's really nice.
Creating space is crucial. Yeah.
I need to take it.
Yes, I see. Yeah. It happens. It happens to the best of us.
Yeah. It's absolutely important to make time to reflect and time to discuss. And another great mentor of mine, when one time I said to her, Sally, I just don't have the time to do this. And her response was, you don't have time not to, because if you're not making the time for that, then you're never going to improve. So that's really, really good. And speaking of making space, thank you for joining us in this space. Thank you all for participating in the conversation and for being active in the conversation. If you didn't get a chance if you have some friends who didn't get a chance to join us today live, we'll make this video available on our blog, which is sibme.com/blog. Tomorrow, so you'll be able to get that. We'll also post it on all our social media channels, so you can find it on Facebook or Twitter or Instagram, or I get lost in the list every once in a while. So, but thank you so much to Corey and to Kenny. This has been such a great conversation, and I think it's the first of many wonderful conversations that we'll get to have over the next several months.
Yeah, thank you for having us. This was awesome. Love getting to talk about coaching.
All right, thanks. Bye, everybody.
Have a good night.